has been a
Hold on, Greg.
good friend. Oh, okay.
Greg, let me go first. All right,
No, I'm
hi
sorry.
everybody. Just got to do the introduction, Greg. You're getting ahead of yourself there. We're doing this live. We're not recording. So, okay, with all that out of the way, this is the Knee Jerks podcast of Eno, Nick, and Big Al for Monday, March 24th, 2025. I'm Al Beaton, your longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger. Joining me as always, as Greg's so excited because we have a very special guest. We have our annual visit from one of our favorite guests. Before we get to him, to get the introductions out of the way, first off, we have our West Coast correspondent, Nick Milanovich. How's things going?
Not too bad, other than the guy yelling outside my window right now,
Yes.
but everything else is just fine.
Awesome. And, of course, the man who was so eager to get this podcast started, and that would be my longtime podcast partner and the man behind the Out of Bounds Substack, gregeno.substack.com, if I'm correct. That would be Mr. Greg Eno. How's things, Greg?
Thank you. Yeah, everything's going well. Al Beaton, thank you very much. I am Greg Eno from my Out of Bounds Substack. gregeno.substack.com is how you can get there. Please subscribe. It's free. I will be in your inbox every Monday if you were to do that. And today did a piece on Comerica Park turning 25 years old next month, believe it or not. It opened in 2000, and here we are 25 years later. So check that out. Also follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow me at Blue Sky. I'm also at Greg Eno there as well. Chris Creighton is here. He's the head football coach at Eastern Michigan University. He's a very good friend of the program. We've been talking since, 2014, believe it or not, almost 11 years. He's been popping in and out of here, and we really appreciate it. He's here tonight as well. And, Coach, thanks again. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I look forward to this.
Well, we'll see if you say the same thing after we get done with the interview. No, and all joking aside, hey, when we were teasing out this interview a few weeks ago, and I told the audience, I said, we're going to have Coach Creighton on. He's not coming off of 2 great years, okay? And we're going to talk about that. And I said, but the thing I like about him is that I know he's not going to duck anything. He's not going to blow any smoke. He's not going to try to tell us something that isn't true. He's going to be honest with us. And that's what we appreciate about you. We've been with you. We've celebrated your triumphs. We've been with you when you haven't had such good years. And so we're, and you're always kind enough to talk about it, win or lose. So that's what we respect about what you do there at Eastern. And here we are again now, coming off of 2 straight years now that were obviously disappointing by anybody's standards. 2-6 last year in the conference, 5-7 overall. It was a rough year, clearly. I don't know that you saw it coming. I don't know if any coach sees anything like that coming. But when you come off something like that, and here we are, March, so you're still 5-6 months away from the next ball game. 5 months, I guess. 5 months is some change. How does that? Do you just grind your teeth and you just can't wait to play again, or what do you do when you come off a season that clearly fell short of your expectations?
Well, I'll tell you how I feel about it. I don't think it was a bad year at all. I thought it was a bad second half. We were 4-1, playing really good football. 5-2, huge comeback win. Homecoming over Central Michigan. Yep. So 7 games in, I'll take 5-2. And then we lost some games that we should have lost.
Right.
And so the back half of the season, the month of November, when you look back on it, was brutal. And it's, what you try to do is you try to fix it. You try to think of, what could you have done differently and whatnot. And, the glaring statistic was when we were 4-1, we were 7-1 in the takeaway turnover ratio. And we went through a 3-game stretch that we lost at the end where we were 1-11. And so I don't care what level it is. I don't care anything. You're not going to win football games when that happens. And that's not luck. That's it is a skill. It's a mindset. It's an attitude. And the ball does bounce, in funny ways. So I don't think the year was bad. I thought the second half was really painful. And it was painful, when it all ended, because, the truth of the matter is that we did not fall apart, and that just talks to, I think, the character of our guys and our culture. I mean, there was no splitting the staff, the team. I mean, every week we prepared and knew we were going to win the game, and then we'd lose. Going into the last game, we still had a chance to win the Michigan MAC and still be bowl eligible in the last game. And nobody in our program considered the fact that we wouldn't win that game. And then we didn't. And so it was just that part's super frustrating. That, to talk a little bit more to answer the second part of your question, here we are in March. I will say that, the last couple of years, not more than that, it's becoming more and more where each year is its own year. And we have a program, we have a culture. I'm going to keep fighting to maintain that as long as we can, and to use that as an advantage, while at the same time we have 24 new players, on our team since January. And so that's a massive amount, with our freshmen still coming in June, and a whole nother transfer portal cycle. And so it's, the years are more compartmentalized nowadays than they used to be. And so, you don't completely start over, but I think anything that you make an assumption about because it's been this way, or, this happened last year, I think is a mistake. And so there is some continuity, there is some continuation, there is program, there is culture, and you better make sure that those 24 guys and then all the inexperienced guys who, are now needing to step up because people have graduated, left, combination, all of those things. If you, make assumptions and don't go through and cover everything, I think you're playing with fire.
You're heading into year 12. We're talking with Eastern Michigan football coach Chris Creighton, by the way, here in the Meadville. I'm Greg Eno from my Greg Eno Autobound Substack, and of course, Big Al Beaton is here and Nick Milanovich as well. But before we bring those meaningful discussion, you're headed into year 12, believe it or not. Are you a different coach now than you were in 2014?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Started out, lots of confidence, but also lots of humility, not having done it at this level, and, not having led a staff of this size, not much familiarity at all with, the MAC or just the landscape and whatnot. And some of the benefits of being at a place for 12 years, I've hired everybody in the program, not just the coaches, but when you're 12 years, you've hired everybody, and then have been a part of recruiting everybody. And, I know the place, and I know the program. You start with the vision, and then, you make that vision happen, and the vision is ongoing. But we're certainly not at the start, anymore. So I think that I've learned a lot. I mean, when I first got here, after having coached quarterbacks and coordinated, essentially my entire career, I knew that I was going to have to be the full-time 24/7 culture coach. And so handed the offense over to Kalen DeBoer, and did exactly that. I mean, handed it over to him and was installing and instilling, our culture. And even though we weren't successful the first 2 years, we absolutely were taking, giant steps forward in ways that nobody could see. And then, after Coach Keene left and took over his alma mater, I did coordinate, for the weird 20 season, 21 and 22, and have turned that back over now, to Mike Piakowski, a former quarterback of mine and whatnot. So yeah, I'm not the same. Nobody as a coach, when you're 22 or 24, whatever the cool sunglasses were, I was wearing them. And, I may have been like the cool older brother, at least I thought I was. And even when I went from Ottawa to Wabash, I wasn't married, didn't have kids, and, was young. Well, when I went and took over at Drake, I was married and had 3 kids. And so, my relationship with the team just started out very differently. And nobody knocks on your door and says, hey, you're not the cool older brother anymore. These guys, it's a different generation. And so I come to Eastern and 44 and married with 3 kids. And, now I'm 56. I got a white beard. And so, you've got different stages. I'm coaching coaches now, maybe more so, than I ever have. And so I think I've grown a lot. Every year we do a cultural audit of the program. Every year we're analyzing, all of our systems, not just offense, defense, and special teams, but we're analyzing our recruiting. We're analyzing our strength and conditioning. We're analyzing, our nutrition, our leadership program, how we develop these guys into the men that they were created to be. So every year we're getting better, we're learning, and we're trying to improve.
You mentioned just before we went on the air that you suffered, not you personally, but the team suffered an injury at practice today. Are you want to elaborate on that, or you want to? Is that too fresh? You don't want to talk about it?
Yeah, no. I just you just hate it, in spring when anybody gets injured, and we did have one today.
Okay, good enough. Let's bring Nick Milanovich in. What you got for Coach Creighton?
Yeah, you had said something just a little while ago that you're noticing that like the seasons feel a little more compartmentalized than they used to. Is that because there's like a lot more turnover? That's like the transfer portal kind of factors in, and so
sure, yeah.
Can you comment on that a little more? I'm curious.
Well, yeah. Instead of having just a senior class, exhaust their eligibility, and then you have the freshman class come in, right? And so you have guys for 5 years, and you plan out, your recruiting for the next 5 years because you're going to have this many safeties as sophomores, juniors, seniors. It's just not that way anymore. We're in a situation right now. I'm sure you're familiar with this, but we have 2 transfer portal cycles in a year. And so. And there is, it's becoming more and more, transitory. And so, each season is its own animal. It always has been, but now it's more that way. So it's a different challenge. Again, you got to realize that. And, it's almost like you want to talk to junior college coaches about how they've run their program, in these 2-year cycles, and just never thought that that's something that, I would be doing. But, now that we're in that, I want to be great at it, so
right.
Try to figure that out.
That's interesting. That is really interesting. That I didn't think about that. The junior college, the 2-year cycle thing. That's Nick. Did you have a follow up or you?
Yeah, it was kind of like so. I would think now because you basically someone comes in as a freshman or a transfer, you might not know how long they're going to be on the team, and so that's a new person that has to acclimate to a new environment. So I would assume how is like sort of this onboarding and getting these new players up to speed change versus when you have them like say for 4 years, you can kind of like I think work them into the system
right
probably more gradually, I would think.
Absolutely. No, that's exactly right. So when I talk about each year being its own and that you can't make any assumptions, I'll give you an example. So, we get 15 practice opportunities in the spring. Well, forever, we would have the vast majority of our installation offensively done going into opportunity 6, which is our first live scrimmage.
Mhm.
Right. And so from 7 to 15, there's going to be some install, but you're really just getting better at what you do. You're not, what I mean by an install, that is putting in, new plays, formations, motions, shifts, screens, whatever it is every day. And so you're not really getting better at that. You're learning it. Right. But then from 7 to 15, once it's all in, you can start getting better at it. Well, even this year, we went into it thinking, just like normal, we would have the vast majority of our install in through 5 and then have our scrimmage. And, we're getting into that second week and it's too much. It's too much. These guys are all, look, it's a foreign language. I'll read you a play call. And let's say you've been here for 2 months. You're on the offensive side of the ball. So we're in 11 personnel. Ball's on the left hash at the 48-yard line. It's 1st and 10. And it's explode, duo right, blue, llama, H fast, Omaha. Okay? And the clock's running. And so you better know whether you're in or not. Then you better know where to line up. You better know what the shift in the motion is. And then you better know what the play is. And that changes depending on what you see versus the defense. And now look, you may have run something very similar to that before at in high school, your previous institution, but you didn't call it explode to duo right, blue, llama, H fast, Omaha. Right. So everything that you've learned, it may have been a numbering system, right? It may have been girls' first names. I don't know. But so you're learning a new foreign language. And then, oh, by the way, now you're going to learn sign language because that's the way that we tell you what it is we're doing with all these words that you already don't know. And then, so we're going to give you an entire playbook, in 5 practices. And when you got freshmen, you're just putting them in the oven. They're getting their opportunities and it's going slow and you don't need them, to be ready. And these guys are doing it for 3 years. So I could put 8 more words onto that and they would be like, no problem. But when I don't want to say the vast majority, but when you have so many people that you're trying to get ready, you have to slow that down. Right? So I think teams and staffs too just have to think about, how much scheme can you do for guys to really know it, get confident at it, and to be good at it. It less might be more, as you get into trying to figure out your team.
Coach Chris Creighton of the Eastern Michigan Eagles here with us. I don't know how much you knew about the MAC before when you left Drake and you came here in 2014, but I'm guessing that having coached in the MAC now for as long as you have, that you would be one of the ones shouting from the rooftops how good the league is. How has the league changed? I know we talked a little bit earlier about how you've changed, but how has the league changed, Coach, since you've been at Eastern?
Well, so, I think one of the strengths of the MAC is that there's been very little change. The MAC, we know who we are, geographically, we are the only conference,
Is that a little dig at the Big Ten?
Yeah.
Because you don't have schools out in California? Is that why you mean San Jose State's not joining the MAC next year?
So I think that we're proud. We've got to be the brightest conference, maybe not the wealthiest, but at least the brightest, by sticking together. And, the schools are very similar. And so there's a great identity. I would also say that, going into 12 years, that the strength is that we know who we are and that we haven't changed. I also think that we've been passed by some of the other Group of 5 schools in terms of, the finances and the resources. That's changed since I, was here. The MAC was not, sort of at the bottom of the resources, and we are right now. I would also say, though, that I think we won 5 bowl games this year, which is a league record all time. So hard to put everything, doesn't always add up. But, yeah, it's a league that, has not changed a lot in a positive way, knows who it is, very like-minded, similar schools, and even geographically, some great history and traditions. Yeah, that's what I think of with the MAC.
Yeah, so and also maybe a league that is comfortable in its own skin. It sounds like what you're saying as well.
Yeah, I do believe that. And if it's behind the times that we're not, taking on the University of Puerto Rico and some school out, in Oregon and then Rhode Island.
Right.
I mean, then I'm glad.
We're talking with Eastern Michigan football coach Chris Creighton here on the Knee Jerks. I'm Greg Eno from my Greg Eno Out of Bounds Substack, gregeno.substack.com. You heard from Nick Milanovich. Now it's time to hear from Big Al Beaton. What you got for Coach Creighton?
Yeah, since we were talking about what's going on in the spring, one of the things I found interesting as of late has been the tendency of schools to go away from having spring games, which is a big deal to the fan bases. And I hear a lot of, from a lot of bigger schools they're just not going to have them anymore due to I believe they're using excuses like we're afraid that they're going to scout our players or they're going to try and poach our players from other teams, try to steal signs, whatever. What's your thoughts on the spring game controversy?
Yeah, there's no controversy with us. I mean, we're going to do, what we do. I would say, just going back a little bit, I know what you're referring to, but there really haven't been spring games like there used to be in some time. And what I mean by that is when you're tackling to the ground. I went out, took my son to Max Crosby's first Pro Bowl. It was out in Las Vegas, and we're watching it was the last Pro Bowl game, right? They finally said, okay, we're playing 2-hand touch, nobody's trying, so we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to break it up and just do tug of war. Spring games are a lot like that, just because you're reducing, the chance and the risk of injury. And so that's been going on forever. I think now, maybe it is for people, poaching or scouting. But I also just think that some people are saying, if you only got 15 practices and if you basically have a brand new team, like I've been referring to, you can't afford not to take advantage of another practice day, right? Because the way that the spring games are run, it's kind of, it's a non-game game. And I think some people are just saying, we got so many people that we got to get up to snuff that, let's have another practice and get better.
Very good. Let's bring back Nick Milanovich into the discussion because we have a limited time with Coach. Nick, what you got?
Just maybe a simple question is is there anything in particular you're excited about with your team going into this coming season?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you talk about, a lot of new people and all that. I get excited about it. I get excited about the challenge of, again, when I say a whole new team, it just feels new. We have plenty of guys who are going into their 5th year and whatnot. We're just talking to the staff about that, but the challenge of saying, okay, if we can bring these guys together and we can be our best throughout the year and towards the end of the year, that's just an awesome challenge. It's, we got to think about it like, let's start from the bottom, from scratch. And people aren't stacked on top. We're all at the bottom horizontally. And who over the next 11 and a half months can come together and continue to get better and better and better and better and better and better all the way through, next December. And I mean, that's a fun, exciting challenge. Just like it is to build a program and have guys there, to have 35th year seniors and then to replace them with 35th year seniors. And you know what I mean? Everybody knows it in and out. That's a challenge. Well, just like I said, with junior college coaches, doing it every 2 years, I think there's something exciting about that. And I will tell you, we know who we are. We have a very strong ethos. People use the word culture and whatnot, and anybody who comes, whether it's a visiting coach or parent or recruit or whatever, that we feel a certain way. And so, we attract that. And so we got great people and another class of great people. And now, it's not January anymore. And so I'm super excited about our team and what we can become. We just, like, I believe everybody, we've got a long way to go. And that's a fun challenge. We've already taken some massive steps.
I want to talk about as you know, I'm an alumni. We know that. I've said that a million times, and I'm involved in a lot of Eastern Michigan groups on social media and so forth. And one thing I noticed, and I would be negligent if I didn't bring this up, is that the last couple of seasons, the fan base. I don't know what you hear at East, literally in Ypsilanti, but I'm talking about the general Eastern Michigan fan base that I commiserate with, are getting a little impatient. And they obviously, the one thing that hasn't happened at Eastern is winning the MAC. Okay, we know that, and I know that you know that. But
we won in '87.
What's that?
Won a MAC championship in 1987. That's the one football championship.
Right. Yeah. So yes. So the fan base is a little bit, and I saw it happen last year, especially like you said, you got off to that good start and then things kind of went downhill. By the end of that season, the fans were besides themselves. Now I know that fans are fans, and I'm not, and you know that they're emotional and they care. It's because they care.
Yeah.
They're impatient, and this is the first time I've ever seen, and I'm not joking. It was the first time I'd ever seen anyone in the fan base really start to criticize you as a coach. Now, I don't know if you hear that kind of talk at all, but and it probably doesn't affect your job. I'm not suggesting that it does. But what are your thoughts about the fan base getting a little bit ornery now? And here we go. Here we are, year 12, and getting a little bit restless. What's your message to the fans?
Yeah, what I've always wanted. We're trying and have been for 12 years to become a source of pride for this department, for the university, for IPSI, and even this region of the country. And so I think there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. Can look at it, I think, objectively and in one way and say we've come a long ways for people to be expecting us to win.
Yep, that's true.
A championship, and
yep.
We've been to 6 bowl games in 8 seasons. They've been to 1 in its previous Division I history. If we get over a 3.0 team cumulative GPA in a month from now, at the end of the semester, it'd be 7 straight years that this Division I FBS football program had a team cumulative GPA of over a 3.0. We have the highest paid non-QB in the history of the National Football League, tearing up the NFL, and other guys playing in the National Football League and the Canadian Football League and in the UFL. Nobody does more community service than our guys do. I think our guys are phenomenal, human beings. And so there's been a lot of good things. And for as far as we've come, we have not gone as far as I really believe that we can. And so, nobody gets, more frustrated than me, in those situations. I promise you that. And I do think that, fans having expectations and believing and whatnot is an awesome sign about, how far we've come. I really believe that. So it'd be awesome if the folks that really want us to get good would chip into the NIL and the rev share. that's a new reality, in college football. One of the things I failed to mention is that, if you went and toured the football facilities from what they've changed and into what we have right now, and it's phenomenal, which makes we should be even better. The transformation of the football facilities here has been incredible. And so we really caught back up with the MAC, and I would say even led the MAC. But now it is a challenge, with resources. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Mhm.
I love it. I love the challenge. I love the program and the culture that we built. I love the people. And I believe that we've been successful and that we can be even more successful. So yeah, I'm not on the social media stuff,
Yeah.
but
No.
you can sense it when.
That's good.
when
Okay,
people are
real quick before I let you go,
frustrated. I think that's
you mentioned players that play in the NFL, and there was some news last week, kind of flew under the radar. The Lions re-signed your old defensive lineman Pat O'Connor, who Pat O'Connor who filled in did an admirable job last year for the Lions. Was re-signed last week by the Lions. Oh yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Did you drop the connection, or did your connection drop?
It may have, but no, I can hear you guys.
We
Can
hear
you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can
Yep.
hear you. Yeah.
I
Greg was asking about Pat O'Connor. Yeah.
No, he can't hear us apparently.
No, I guess not.
He can't hear us. I don't know what happened. Why that would be.
Yeah, I
That's
really couldn't
pretty
tell you.
sudden.
Yeah, there was.
Yep.
something.
Well, why don't we just probably time to let him go anyway. We're at 30+ minutes. So
Unmuted.
Can you hear us now, Coach?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
yes, we can hear you.
Yes. We can hear you. He can't hear us.
He can't hear us. So
Wow. Okay.
shall we just end it right as of right
You can
now,
hear
Greg?
me?
Yeah, we can hear
I
you.
can't hear you.
Yes.
I can see that you're
Okay.
talking,
You can't,
Yeah.
but
you can't hear us.
I don't know what I'm supposed
That's
to
what-
do.
Okay.
I'm not muted.
Okay.
Okay, that's all right. It happens.
Well, if he can't hear us, Greg, we should just kind of wrap things up because we're
That's fine.
already past time.
Coach, we'll let you go. We'll let you
I
go.
can't- I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes.
I hear
That's all
right.
that you're talking, guys.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll let him go. We'll let him go.
We'll let you go. Thank you.
Bye, Coach.
Yeah. Yes, we're done.
Oh, okay.
We'll see you.
All right. We'll see you.
That's all right. That's all right. I was just going to ask about Pat O'Connor. That's okay.
Yeah. No, he's I just took. He is out of the studio, all set.
Okay. Good
So,
enough.
all right.
Good enough. Thanks.
All right. Yeah. It's that's the one thing of today's technology, guys, is sometimes it just decides to
Yeah.
act up. Like I said early on, I got booted because I'm up at the cottage. If you're watching this on video, you can see I'm in in our old cabin right now. I'm being warmed up by 2 buddy heaters up here. And yeah, I got booted for a while. So technology, what are you going to do? So, but that was always an entertaining talk of Coach Greg. I mean, it's always fun.
Yeah. He's not.
He's always open. You know,
He's not
doesn't
a
feel like he's
one-word-
trying to hide.
No, he's not a one-word
Yeah.
answer guy. He you don't
Mhm.
you have like a fistful of questions and you only get to half of them because he gives you lengthy answers, but not verbose, just lengthy,
Yes.
thoughtful answers.
Yes.
He's not, and like you said, he won't duck anything, and he won't
Yes.
ever be anything less than honest. So, thanks to Coach and thanks to
Exactly.
Coach Steiner Eastern for setting that up for us as usual. We appreciate that.
Exactly. We much appreciate it. We always enjoy talking to Coach.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. I guess, Greg, you were so eager to get things started earlier. So now that we got this out of the now we've had our interview taken care of. Before we get to all the sports that's going on, there's a ton going on.
Mhm.
Why don't you? I know it's time for the birthday game, I believe.
It is. Let's play
Yes.
a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. We give Al and Nick a clue or 2 or 3 of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And either of those 2 gentlemen can correctly guess that person within the first 2 clues. Tonight they will win Electronic Battleship. Electronic Battleship is on the line here. Yeah. So
electronic battleship.
electronic battleship. That's fancy schmancy battleship.
Yes. Okay, I like that better. The fancy schmancy. All right. Yeah. All right. Fire away.
Yeah, this person made his name in football. Was born in this state in 1976, so he's 49 years old today. He's a Hall of Famer. He has made his name a name for himself after his career as well for being a very outgoing television person, streaming person, appears in a lot of commercials, likes to keep his face out there, and is a Super Bowl winner. And I think he won. How many Super Bowls did he win? He won 2 Super Bowls, and he is a very part of a football family. Let's put it that way.
Well, what year would you say his birthday was again?
76.
76. All right, would put his Super Bowls in the 90s. 1, 2.
Peyton Manning? No, that's too young.
Eli Manning.
It is. No, it is Peyton Manning. It is.
Oh, really?
Oh,
okay, yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, Peyton Manning, 49 years old today. 49 years old today. Did you know his nickname was the Sheriff? I'd never heard that before.
I had never heard that in my life. No.
The Sheriff. I've never.
I didn't realize he was 49 either. Wow.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Is that according to like Football Reference? Because sometimes when you look at the reference sites, and they have some oddball nicknames. They really do.
Some SB Nation. I don't know what that's all. But anyway.
Yeah.
Peyton played 18 seasons in the NFL. Won 2 Super Bowls. Won 1 for Denver and 1 for obviously Indianapolis. Or did he win both with Denver? Wait.
No, 1 and 1.
No, 1 in Indy and 1 in Denver.
Okay, yeah, 1 and 1. He was the a 1-1 pick in '98 out of Tennessee, obviously, and of course part of the famous Manning family. Is Eli eligible for Hall of Fame? By the way,
yes, that was kind of that was a big topic that he was least eligible, but he did not get elected on this time around, as he shouldn't be. If not for the 2 Super Bowls. He was an average quarterback at best, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I feel like it took one of the most famous catches of all time with Tyree's helmet catch to even get him one of those Super Bowls. So, but I was also going to add, Peyton Manning might have played 18 years. You said?
Yeah.
I think his arm only played 15. But
I
mean that last year in Denver. Oh my God, he was strong. I don't know. That's the. That is the defense wins championships right there, because Peyton Manning was just a shell of himself.
Yes, he was. Yes. He was, absolutely.
But Nick, congratulations. Yes.
Yeah, good one by Nick. Back to Eli, though, I feel like he is like almost like a case study in Hall of Fame voting, because normally when you're a quarterback and you win 2 Super Bowls, normally that gets you in. But to your point, you're right. He was. I wouldn't consider him a Hall of Fame quarterback.
He was a mediocre quarterback except for two playoff games.
But what I'm saying is, normally when you win 2 and you're a quarterback, it's almost guaranteed that you get in. So I'm eager to see how this plays out. I'm not sure how many years he's on the ballot. I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, the Pro Football. Obviously, no, it's a Pro Football. It's a football Hall of Fame. Or is it the Pro Football Hall of Fame? It is Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not like it's just baseball.
Not like basketball, right?
Yeah, exactly. Basketball is the one that encompasses everything. Right. But it's very convoluted, where they have like these secret conclaves. It's much like electing a pope, and they have they usually have writers that. And then writers that make a case for players. It's very. So remember, like Peter King used to write about it, and it's very convoluted. Yeah, just wait for the white puff of smoke and someone's elected, I guess. But yes, it is very. Yeah, I think we will all agree. Peyton Manning, Hall of Famer. Eli Manning, not a Hall of Famer. Archie Manning, not a Hall of Famer. Yeah. Archie Manning, college Hall of Famer, sure, but yeah. Anyway, guys, I think it's time to talk a little bit of Detroit sports. And there's been quite a bit going on. Tigers have made news. They signed a new center fielder as we are on the verge of opening day. They're going to start Thursday. Lions have essentially just brought the gang back together when it came to free agency. Red Wings are just doing Red Wings things in March. And obviously the NCAA tournament's going on. And surprisingly, there's two local teams that have made it to the Sweet 16. And the Pistons are actually playing pretty darn well and pretty much in playoff position. I'd like to let's start with the Pistons, guys, because one, they're playing very well. And two, there was a lot of attention paid to them over the past couple weeks. Not because of what they're doing, but because of a TV commentator doesn't know about them. But first off, the Pistons are now they won last night. They beat the Pelicans. They're 40-32, solidly in the playoff 6 seed. Only 10 games left to play before the playoffs. They have already clinched at worst a play-in spot in the play-in round. They're 5 games up on the 7-seeded Hawks, and they're only 1 game back of the Pacers and Bucks for the 4 seed, as they were essentially tied. But if things stood right now, they would play the 3 seed Knicks, who are honestly they match up really well with. They've won 2 or 3 this year, and both their wins have been in Madison Square Garden. So it's not like I think they would be that intimidated going into New York City. But as well, and it's worth noting that the game they won last night, they were missing 2 starters. Tim Hardaway was out with an ankle sprain, and Cade Cunningham was I think it was more load management than anything else, but they said he was out with a calf issue, or however that may be. But all the attention came, as good as the story has been about the Pistons this year, the Shaquille O'Neal made headlines last week by showing how very little someone who's paid $15 million a year to talk on TNT about the NBA, how much he knows about what's one of the best stories in the NBA this season, which is the Pistons. Even our best case scenario was, well, if they win 30 games, we'd be thrilled. They're on track to win going into the mid 40s at this point. They're going to make the playoffs. Yet this past week, Shaquille O'Neal, while on air, guys, with TNT, he praised Chauncey Billups for coaching the Pistons. And honest, thank goodness they did. The commentators with them said no, they had to correct them. No, it's JB Bickerstaff who is coaching the Pistons right now, as Chauncey Billups is running the Trailblazers. And then earlier that week, weirdly, this was a highlight that his podcast decided to put out on social media, and it really went viral. Was when they released like a minute and a half long segment, and on his podcast, Shaq called the Pistons boring. Claimed at the time that they recorded, he claimed they were 4 games under 500 when they were actually 7 games over 500, and then boasted he doesn't watch Detroit because they haven't won anything. This is essentially, guys.
Is that your jerk of the week? Is that your jerk of the week?
I know. It should be. It really should be. Jesus. But there's been a controversy this year about NBA commentary anyway. A bunch of it's focused around the NBA and TNT because Charles Barkley doesn't seem to watch games that much either for them. And I mean, he got busted on he does the NCAA games, does the post game, halftime and all that, and he got busted. They asked him about the Xavier game, and he said, "I'm not watching that. I'm watching Michigan State." He was watching the Michigan State game instead. He goes, "I can't answer your question." So there's been a lot of talk this year about how bad the NBA media is. I mean, you have like Shaq over here who, I would ask you this, guys. So let's just start with that. Let's start with what Shaq did was ultimately damn stupid. And I've never liked him anyway. He's always come across as an ass to me. But what if this had happened on the NFL on Fox, and say it was, Howie Long did this, or what if it was Sunday Night Football and Chris Collinsworth said something like this? People would be losing their effing minds. Yet Shaq says several stupid things about probably the best story in the NBA this year, and it's people, it's just Shaq. No, the NBA on TNT, that's just how they are. And it's like, how come they get away with it, but it doesn't seem like any other commentators would? No, feel free. I find it strange. I find it dumb.
I think the reason Barkley and O'Neal are on the TNT thing is just for Barkley to say something and Shaq is there to laugh at everything. And that's about it. It's just kind of like, it's like a bunch of friends sitting on a couch drinking beer and rambling about basketball, whether they know anything or not. So,
well, the thing is, though, I know guys on the couch who know more about basketball than those two apparently do. I think you guys do, for fuck's sake.
Oh, sure. But, it's just kind of their personalities. And so that's why they're there. So it's got to be pretty bad if Shaquille O'Neal is that clueless about what's going on this year. Although I will say, too, like I watched the Pistons Miami Heat game. And that was like a national game. Yeah, that was. I swear there were several times I thought for some reason that was the local Miami announcers, because it's just like talking about the Heat. Well, let's see what the Heat do. They're trying to break out of this, whatever 7 or 8 game losing streak, and it's like always focusing on the Heat and the Heat and the Heat, and it's like, and then at the very end, guess what happened?
Cade Banks in the 3-pointer, and it's all about Cade Cunningham all of a sudden. Yeah,
right, that's right. But like all game long, it was just it was garbage announcing, and the stuff they talked about was like stupid shit. I don't remember who the announcers were, but it seems like one of them was associated with the Miami Heat team, and they're talking about things about the Miami Heat and the Miami Heat players from the past or what's going on in the past. Like I got so sick of hearing about the Miami Heat, it just drove me nuts.
Yeah, it wasn't their number one team because they didn't have Doris Burke, who didn't do that game. So at least we know it wasn't their number one team anyway. But just to kind of go along with that, since we're on this, the Michigan game the other night. I watched the first half on television, but I went to bed. It was a 10-10 start or whatever the hell it was, Michigan time. So I ended up listening to the second half while I was trying to fall asleep, and the commentators, whom I forgot who the color commentator was, he started going on about, Nick. I know Nick's a Michigan alum. He has an idea what's going on with Michigan basketball. Michigan basketball has a knack for blowing leads and having lots of turnovers. That's just how they are this year. Well, the color commentator was going on, I don't know what's going on with Michigan right now. They were playing after food, and they started taking some bad shots, and they played loose with the ball. And I'm thinking to myself, if you did any research at all on the Michigan basketball team, that's been their MO. That's what they do. They take big leads. They start to get sloppy. They aren't the best 3-point shooting team, and they commit a lot of turnovers. Thus, they keep teams in games. And that's exactly what happened against UC San Diego. And I couldn't. What is with these announcements? I know they have a lot of games to do. These guys are doing 4 games in a day and all that. It was day 1 of the tournament. But at the very least, you should have basic notes about your teams you're covering. And we're seeing more and more, especially with the talking head types, the Shaqs and the Barkleys, or Stephen A. Smith for that matter. It feels like they're just winging it. They're making shit up as they go along and hoping people don't notice. And this has been, we've heard this like during the Tigers playoff run last year. It was obvious the national play-by-play and color guys had no idea what was going on with the Tigers because they had not paid attention to them all year long until like the last month of the year. And that's just how it is with these national games.
Well, I'll give you an example also about national announcers. You know who Kendrick Perkins is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm the ESPN guy. Yes.
Right. Okay. He and Stephen A. and Shannon Sharp were talking about the Pistons. We're talking about JB Bickerstaff's tirade about the officials.
Oh, yes. We got to talk about that, too, after this.
Yeah, after that game against OKC. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And it was clear that, look, Sharp was pro Bickerstaff. Perkins and Stephen A. were a little bit anti Bickerstaff. But you could tell that Perkins and Stephen A. didn't see the game, which they probably didn't see the game, or didn't know, at the very least, didn't know why JB was upset. because they were framing the argument as it's shut up and stop whining. I'm tired of coaches whining about the all-star guy from OKC. I can't remember his name. Gets all the calls and goes on the line a million times a game. Of course he's going to go line. He gets they're getting calls because they're 56-10 or whatever they are, and of course they're going to get calls, and just basically shut up about it. And I'm tired of coaches yelling and screaming, and they didn't talk about the fact that Cade got kicked out of the game in the third quarter. They didn't talk about the fact that the Pistons got 5 technical fouls like at one time, essentially, in that game. You could just tell that their argument that they were framing was from people who didn't see the game. Okay. Yeah. Sharp. Now I don't know if Sharp saw the game, but Sharp was taking a different tack and saying that he agreed with JB about got to get respect, and I can see why he did it, and I'm good for him, and kind of the same tack that I took in my piece last week. But you could tell that Stephen A. and Kendrick Perkins didn't know what they were talking about, quite frankly, because they didn't see the game. Yeah. Nobody briefed them. Nobody does their homework anymore. Nobody bothered to just come. Let me watch this and see what happened. They just came at it like as if they were uneducated about it, and it was more nuanced than they were making. That's the word I'm looking for. It was more nuanced than these guys were making it out to be. They just dismissed it as JB as being just another coach who's complaining about OKC getting the calls, and they were saying, "Well, you're not OKC yet, so you're not going to get those calls." Well, that really wasn't the gist of what JB was talking about. But that's just another example of how national announcers don't understand the nuance sometimes of some of these instances, and they take that bull in a china shop approach, which is kind of almost like a one size. I'm going to just give a one size fits all argument here, and my argument's going to be, well, I'm sick of you whining all the time. These aren't one size fits all arguments though with these things.
Yeah. It's very frustrating, especially of people who are fans of mid-market teams or teams that aren't normally good, or if you're not the Lakers, if you're not, I could put it this way, if you're not essentially right now, if you're not the Lakers or if you're not the Warriors, even a team like the Cavaliers, who are having an amazing season, they feel like they've been shuffled aside because they're talking about what's going on in Golden State and what's going on with LeBron and the Lakers and the Luka trade. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that's at the very least, most of the other sports do have guys who know what they're talking about majority of the time. But yeah, it's very frustrating to fans of teams that aren't essentially the Lakers or the Warriors in the NBA. It's obvious they don't watch the games, they don't care about the games, they don't pay attention to the games. And speaking of that, I guess let's go on. I forgot to add Bickerstaff's rant to the notes, so we do need. Thank you, Greg, for bringing it up. It's definitely worth talking about because he went off on the referees after it was a 113-107 loss to the West leading Oklahoma City Thunder, another team that's being under talked about. Very good team, because the Pistons got 5 technical fouls in the third quarter. 2 of them went to Cade Cunningham, as you'd mentioned, and he got kicked out. The second tech was for I believe Cade said he told the referee. People said you could hear it over the broadcast that he said they were going to put the OKC shooter on the foul line and have him shoot like it was a technical foul, and there was nobody lined up. And Cade said, "Ref, line us the fuck up," and apparently that teed him up. And apparently the post game, the referees called it disrespectful language, as if they have never heard an F-bomb thrown at them in a game before. If that was disrespectful language, I hope these referees never did a game with Rasheed Wallace, for Christ's sake. So yeah. But yeah, it was a badly refereed game. It really felt like that OKC was pretty much given free will at times. It felt like against the Pistons defense. Post game, Bickerstaff went off, and what I do find interesting is that we've heard nothing about a fine. There's been nothing about him. It's been over a week now since he went off, which is interesting. And some of the quotes were here. I'm disgusted by the way that game was officiated. The level of disrespect was above and beyond. The Thunder have a guy fall down and trip on his own teammate's foot. They review us for a hostile act. They throw an elbow to our chest and neck area. I asked them for at least take a look at a replay. Just show us the respect to take a look at it. No one would take a look at it. The disrespect has gone far enough, and I'm not going to allow our guys to be treated the way they were tonight. And that was pretty much Bickerstaff's post-game press conference. He then crumpled up the stat sheet, threw it, and walked off. And I would think after that, his players would run through a wall for him. That was, I think that's something they needed to hear because as he put it, earlier on in that rant, he put that we are a team. We are essentially saying we are a defensive team that plays physical and plays on the edge. And he said, give us the respect that's our nature play. And for that matter, that's the history of good Pistons basketball, for Christ's sake. So, Greg, you wrote about this. I know. Why don't you let everybody know because you had a great column on this.
Thanks. Yeah. The way I was positioning it was that and I was talking about how the NBA has a caste system, which is essentially, and this has been going on forever, that says you're not going to get calls usually as a young player. Certain teams are not going to get calls. Home teams get calls. All that stuff's been going on since I started following the NBA in the 70s. That's not new. Okay. And JB knows that. Okay. He knows that. What he was the way I looked at it wasn't just about that particular game and his frustration with that particular moment in that game. I think what he was trying to do was trying to lay the groundwork for future, just to let everybody know that the Pistons are here. The Pistons are back. Mm-hmm. We're here to compete. We want, and I mentioned, and it was that word, respect, and not respect in terms I want more calls per se, but respect in how you're treated within the game by the officials. And you listed it yourself a few moments ago when you were talking about how he was scolded and players were getting teed up and so forth. It wasn't really about whether the calls were good or bad. It was about the respect factor of we're the Detroit Pistons. And I said, look, this is not going to change overnight. You're not going to. Pistons won 14 games last year. They've won, how many games in the last 3 years combined? Maybe 50 tops in the last 3 years combined. So they're not going to get. Mm-hmm. We know that going in. That coming into this season, they were not going to be a team that was going to get the benefit of the doubt. I think the reason that he did that when he did it. Now, had he done this back in November, December, when they were still struggling a little bit, 4 or 5 games under 500, it might have been a different deal. But now that they've turned a corner essentially, and now they're kind of playing with the big boys a little bit now. And I think the timing was intentional. Now, obviously, the situation with all the technical fouls kind of presented an opportunity for him to do this. I got the feeling that this was something that's been brewing inside of him for quite some time, and it just kind of all burst out of him because of what happened in that particular game. But I don't think it was that particular game that caused him to get upset per se. I think that he is trying to do two things. Number one, and as I said at the end of the column, it's going to play well in the locker room. The locker room is going to eat that up. We know that. But I think what is the long game here is to plant seeds that the Pistons are back and need to be respected again. And I think that's what he's trying to do. Is he's trying to just say, look, enough is enough. We're here too. As we sit here, we're 40 and 32. That not at the time, but right now the Pistons are 40 and 32. Every great chance to win 46, 47 games. Okay, a year after winning 14, like you said, Al. Certainly could match up well with the Knicks in a first-round matchup if it came down to that. Wouldn't be surprised if they won the series, quite frankly. So this is a team now, franchise, that has had, sand kicked in its face for how many years? Now, some of that is self-inflicted, yes. But I think it was more than just a coach being upset at calls in a game is what I was trying to get at. The exact opposite of the take that Kendrick Perkins and Stephen A. took, which was shut up and quit whining. It wasn't like that. And if they don't know, I don't expect them to know. They're national guys. But I was proud of them. I was proud of JB. I thought that, I don't know if it was as intentional or as strategic as I'm making it out to be, but I believe that that's what he was doing, even if subconsciously was trying to put his team back somewhat on an even level with some of these great teams in the league right now. And maybe, quite frankly, he may have been having some eyes on the playoffs. He knows his team's going to make the playoffs. So he starts to say these kinds of things now with 10 games left to go in the season. It may help him. He'll help his team out a little bit in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you there. I think he was also sending a message to his team to like keep playing your game too.
Yes.
And never back down from that.
Yes.
And
yes.
The other part is he's publicly got his players' backs.
Yes.
And which you were never going to see that last year with Monty.
No,
never. I don't know what the hell he was saying after those games. It just made no sense. He was just a little too apathetic, actually.
Right.
So he's firing up a young team and keeping that fighting spirit going into the next game. Because they had just lost to OKC, and no, I think he did exactly what a coach should do, and it sends like a message saying we're not backing down from anybody.
Right.
Whether we win or lose, we're not backing down, and he's got a young team that needs that toughness, and maybe sometimes need to be reminded of that toughness. And but it fired up their guys. And I've said it before, I love the way they're playing. They're scrappy, they're fighting, and they don't give up. And that's what they need to keep doing. Even if they've made the playoffs, they got to keep that mentality. And when they get into the playoffs, even kick that up a notch. Who knows? But yeah, I'm actually looking forward to them being in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I would say one other thing to keep in mind is you have fans say, why don't they do this more often? Or why doesn't he go off like this, when he feels so slighted or whatever? You can't go to this well too many times. It's much like when people used to say, well, people always bring up Jim Leland's rant early in the season in 2006. And basically you get one of those, maybe two if you're lucky. But that's it. You can't keep going to that well, because then it becomes – this starts to sound like either you're crying wolf, or you're just going to piss off the people you're trying to get the point across to.
You'll be like Phil Jackson.
There you go. and then Jackson will give you a book to read, So this is one of those things that it's a one-off. He got his point across. It's very interesting that we heard nothing about a fine from the NBA. Which is I expected them to bring because you don't want to criticize the refs, but we've heard nothing about it from the NBA, so maybe he got off on this one, but it was deservedly so, because there was no lies told here, and I think you guys made great points between getting across to the league, getting across to the players, and preparing for the playoffs. And the playoffs are a completely different breed of basketball, where the game slows down and gets more physical. And that might play into the slow down part might not play into the Pistons' wheelhouse, because they are a fast break team when they're at their best. But they do play a very physical game. With All-Star Thompson and Beef Stew and what's it? Who's the rookie had a big game last night? Ron Holland. Yes, exactly. These guys. They play a very emotional, physical kind of basketball, and it's very Detroit Pistons basketball, which is why fans love that stuff. So, I'm with you, Nick. I think the playoffs, I would be very disappointed if the Pistons don't take a series to 6 or 7 games, if not win it, especially if they play the Knicks, because I think that is a team. If I'm the Knicks, I'm terrified of the Pistons, because they do not match up well against them. On the other hand, I don't want to face Milwaukee, because there's no way they can stop I don't see how the Pistons can stop the Greek Freak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, they've had a hell of a time with Milwaukee. This year too. Years past they couldn't beat anybody, but this year they've struggled against Milwaukee. Boston, they could probably win a couple games, maybe.
Yeah. Especially if Boston has an off shooting night with 3-pointers, which we saw last time they played the Pistons. They jacked up like 53 pointers and they only shot up like 20-something%.
And I don't know if they stack well against the Pacers. That's kind of hard to say.
But that series, I think they would try to kill each other. So it might be entertaining. They do.
Yeah,
those two teams don't like each other. It's obvious they don't like each other. And it would bring back the rivalry they had back in the going to
early
work
2000s. Yeah.
Yes, and when those games are rock fights, and obviously we're not going to even get into the malice at the Palace. But yeah, the Pistons and the Pacers do have playoff history, and that's where rivalries are really made. They are really made in the playoffs, and so we could have some very interesting matchups coming up in a couple. Think about it. We're only talking what 3 weeks from now, give or take. I mean, that's going to be. It's been so long since we played. Even where we've had. Yes, they did make the team with. They did make the playoffs with Blake Griffin. But Blake Griffin had used up his entire body by the time they made the playoffs, and they were just. It was 4 games. They were going to be done. Everybody knew it. That series was over before it started. But I think this Pistons, even if they don't win a series, they're going to make a team work for it, and that it's going to be. I can't wait. I'm with you, Nick. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be fun.
I know. It's been so long since I had any hope that the Pistons would win a playoff game. With Griffin, I think they got into the playoffs by the skin of their teeth, and it's just like,
yep, they were an 8 seed. Yep.
Yeah. So, and it's just like, okay, 4 more games till the misery stops, basically.
Right.
But no, this is like the first time I've seen true Pistons basketball in a long, long time. I love Ron Holland. He's 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Man, he doesn't back down from anybody. You got to watch out. He's going to start fighting somebody. So because he gets in the face of everybody.
19. Yes.
I know.
And he's a damn teenager. He's a teenager, and he shows no fear.
Oh, he's tougher than a $2 steak. I mean, seriously, man. It's really fun to see that again versus kind of they go into a game and they already seem beat down from the very beginning, but it goes through emotions.
Exactly.
So.
All right. I guess before we move on, anything else about the Pistons? I want to keep on basketball. There's something I want to talk about with the NCAA tournament. So shall we just move on to that, guys?
Sure.
All right. Well, as expected, Michigan State moved on. They beat. Let's see here. Let me bring up my notes here. I don't have my big screen in front of me. I got 3 different small screens here. I got to look around. But Michigan State, they beat. They will be facing Ole Miss this coming weekend as a 2 seed. Ole Miss, I believe, is a 6. Michigan, they beat UC San Diego, as I mentioned earlier, and they also beat Texas A&M, a 4 seed, to move on to the Sweet 16. That's right, here we go. Okay, MSU beat out number 15 seed Bryant and 10 seed New Mexico. So both have moved on. Michigan's got their work cut out for them. They're playing Auburn, the number 1 seed of the entire tournament. But at the very least, I think for Michigan, this is a very successful season, no matter even if it ends at the Sweet 16. And Michigan State, they really need a deep run. This is the first. It looks like this is the first team Tom Izzo's had in several years that could make it to the Final Four. But what's more interesting to me is those 2 teams made it out of the Big Ten, along with Maryland and Purdue. But this is what's interesting about this whole thing now. Especially we kind of touched on this. We were talking to Coach Creighton. There's no true Cinderellas left in the tournament. There's no mid-majors. There's no small teams. There's no schools from tiny conferences. Greg, I'm sure you remember when Eastern made a run in the tournament. Wasn't that back in the late 80s, if I remember right? Didn't they make it to the Sweet 16 one time?
They made it.
Remember right?
You're right. They made it to the Sweet 16 in 92.
92. Okay, yes. And that's the sort of thing I think we're going to start seeing less and less because the Sweet 16 this year. This is the first time since they expanded to 64 teams in 1985. 64 teams in 85. The Sweet 16 this year has no mid-majors, no small teams. They have 7 teams from the SEC, 4 teams from the Big Ten, 4 from the Big 12, and 1 from the ACC. That's it. So there's no Gonzaga, there's no St. Mary's, there's no Eastern Michigans, there's no look where Dusty May's from. Was it the Florida team he took to the Final Four a couple years ago? No, mid-major team. Loyola Chicago, who made the Final Four a few years ago. No, those teams are nowhere to be found. And guys, it's starting to look like this might be the new NCAA tournament, thanks to the changes with super conferences and big money NIL and things like that. Like the kid that transferred from Michigan to Kansas, was it Hunter?
Dickinson?
You know who I'm talking about. Yes, Hunter Dickinson, the really annoying assy guy, if you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
Michigan fans hated him. Yeah, Michigan fans hated the guy. So do Kansas fans. He was a 6-year senior this year.
Hmm.
I read that I believe he got $1.2 million in NIL money. And so he stayed because he's the type of player that has no future in NBA. No, he can't defend, he's too slow. And he has a limited offensive game. Yet he stayed at the college level because he got paid. And yet he couldn't carry them to the next level. But small schools can't afford to do that. They don't have that kind of NIL money to throw around. So this might be the harbinger of things to come, guys, where big schools are going to dominate the tournament. And the thing is, why did the tournament get so popular? Cinderellas. Teams that weren't supposed to be there making it. Now, how did Gonzaga get so famous? Because they were able to make runs in the tournament, for Christ's sake.
Right.
After no one watched them play 11 o'clock at night on the West Coast all year. And then they pop up in the tournament and become giant killers. But the thing is now, they're all giants in the Sweet 16. Now, even if they were lower seeded, they're still big-ass state schools for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm the NCAA in the tournament, I'm getting a little concerned about this.
Well, yeah, I mean that was part of its charm for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think but you have to have in a perfect world, you'll have a blend. You'll have the big kahunas, and you'll have some mid majors, and you'll have some true Cinderellas. Like I remember one year Davidson, which I don't even know where it is. Davidson made it. I'm not sure if they made it all the way to the Final Four, but it was close. Some of these schools, like you said, Gonzaga is a great example.
Or Butler.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of schools that are great examples of people not knowing anything about them until they pop up in March one year, and they may bob to the surface and never hear from them again. But these are some in some cases, Al, really good basketball programs that are, despite the fact that they did make long runs in the NCAA tournament, are still good basketball programs. They happen to latched on to win a couple of games. You only have to win 2 games to get to the Sweet 16. You run into 2 wins, and all of a sudden now you get some exposure. To your point, a lot of these teams were regional telecasts at best. Now they're national let's talk about Oakland. Oakland last year.
Yeah, Jack Golke, yes.
They upset Kentucky last year.
Kentucky.
And basically shoved Calipari out. Is he in Arkansas now or somewhere? He's not even at the school.
Yeah, he went to Arkansas.
So because of Golke, and he went crazy in that first game. Then they almost went into they came this close to making the Sweet 16 themselves. And again, there were a lot of fans, basketball fans, who did not know where Oakland was. There were some folks who thought it literally was Oakland, California, really, truly. Mm-hmm. And so that's another example of a really good basketball program a
very, very good coach. In Greg
Campbell,
who's deserved a bigger stage.
Yeah, right. And that's an example of a good program that some people just don't know about. But yet it's still a good program. And so, but you can't control who's going to win these games, of course. And there's still, it's still exciting, even if there aren't these Cinderellas that you're talking about. You still have the Michigan story, which is still a pretty good story. I mean, look where
Yes,
they
it
were
is.
last year. Now that nobody's going to look at Michigan as a Cinderella story, of
Yeah,
course.
right.
If you look at where they were last year,
Well, Nick might see them as a Cinderella, but he's got a vested interest. So
yeah.
I see them as a necessary turnaround. It's a good turnaround
Yeah.
story after. I
Yeah.
mean, last year was like terrible, even for among bad Michigan teams.
Right.
yes,
Right.
So-
yes,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
but I think the thing is though, a lot of these Cinderella teams we were talking about, the Butlers and the Gonzagas and things like that, they were veteran teams. They were usually heavily junior and senior laden. Sometimes a lot of fifth-year seniors.
Yep.
Now we're going to see the bigger schools like Thunder Dickinson I told you about. 6 years, what 3 at Michigan, 2 at Kansas. Those are the kind of guys who are hanging around at the big schools now that the smaller schools just can't handle. They won't be able to financially, and for that matter, well, look how Michigan improved, Nick. They got guys from small schools, like Vlad Golden, who played for Dusty May down at that small school in Florida last year. He came up and has been dominant for them, and the other kid was it Danny Gold, played at Yale last year. Michigan is essentially, that's how they got turned around so quick, is they did a hell of a job in the portal and paid some guys. And I think that's how we're going to see that more and more from the big schools, and at the cost of those little schools losing those guys to the big schools because they're going to get paid.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in Michigan's case, if I remember correctly, their recruiting class, because of Juwan Howard, was pretty lousy too.
Yes, it was.
So their only way to rebuild was to, go into the portal this past year.
Yeah, and then then the kid from Ohio State went nuts, and scored like 26 points to beat Texas A&M, and it was like, well, but how often are you going to say that? A transfer from Ohio State won a game from Michigan, and that's essentially what happened the other night. So, but yeah, it's I'm looking forward to see that. I'm going to avoid. I try to anyway. But I'm going to try to avoid Detroit Sports Talk Radio because they're going to bring up the Michigan State rivalry stuff. Because if both teams win, they will probably be playing in the Elite Eight. They'll play it against each other in the Elite Eight. And that's going to be a nightmare between radio and social media and online and the newspapers and everything.
That's exactly what Dick Vitale.
It's going to bring out the worst. Yes, but it's going to bring out the worst of everybody.
He predicted before.
Oh, he did? Started. I did not know Dickie V predicted that.
Dickie V predicted Michigan State in the Elite Eight. He did.
Oh, wow.
God. Oh. Yeah, then the monkey's paw curls, and it makes everybody miserable because everybody's hating on each other for a weekend. Okay. Except for Nick, who's we have to bring up Nick had the big controversy with himself between the Michigan and Iowa State. You brought up the game.
Yeah,
that was the women's game, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you guys, I've talked about it many times, having gone to Michigan, but then I did graduate work at Iowa State University. And I always wondered, what if those two schools meet in a game of any kind? What do I do? Who do I root for?
Yeah.
Honestly, I grew up a Michigan fan, but in this case, there's the part of me that is an Iowa State Cyclone. So I look at it this way. I can't lose in that.
Right.
And I just hope for a good game. Yeah. Not a blowout by one team or the other. I want to see a good game. And in the basketball, I'm going to root for whichever team wins and to win the next game after that. So in this case, it happened to be Michigan, who I think they were down at the end of the first half and then came back. So, yeah.
Now, Michigan State had their hands completely full with New Mexico until about 6 or 7 minutes to go, and then they finally took over. But that game was, I think, 51-51 at one point.
Yeah, and Jace Richardson was awful.
Yes.
He was like 0 for 1,000 or something like that for the majority of the game. So the state did get a little lucky, but again, that's how tournaments work. A little bit of luck, matchups, and whoever gets hot shooting, so. And for example, Michigan won because the kid from Ohio State got hot and went. I think he had like 12 straight points in the second half, and that carried him. So, but with that, you know what? We could talk about the Red Wings, but you know what would happen? We'd be bitching about the same stuff all over again.
Yeah.
They're going to miss the playoffs. Nothing's changed. Now they're talking. They're hurt by injuries again. They've had a couple emergency call ups for tonight's game in Utah. It's like at this point, they're not going to make the playoffs. We'll probably end up talking about them whenever Steve Yzerman talks after the season at this point, because we're just going to say the same damn shit and get angry about it, and nothing's going to change. That's just how it is. But the Tigers, on the other hand, or opening days this week, as I mentioned earlier, they're playing a couple exhibition games in San Francisco before they start the season with a bit of a gauntlet by 3 games with the Dodgers. And then they go to Seattle for 3 games for, I believe, opening day in Detroit is a week from Friday. So with that, though, there's been a lot of roster moves. And there was actually breaking news while we were talking to Coach about one of their players who's going to be out. So first off, Matt Vierling, he's still out with the rotator cuff strain. They give him a timetable when he's coming back. It was released today that Parker Meadows, who is still battling that nerve issue with his throwing arm, he was placed on the 60-day DL this afternoon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's out till at least late May, so that's not good. Winseel Perez, I got the notification on my phone when we were talking to Coach. Winseel Perez has back tightness, back inflammation. He's out for a month. So there's another outfielder that's gone. And so with that, it was announced yesterday that the Tigers addressed their shrinking outfield depth by signing right-hand hitting Manuel Margot to a 1-year major worth $1.3 million. It looks like he's going to play center field against left-handed pitching until Vierling comes back, or Meadows, or whomever. One of these other outfielders come back. Margot, I actually got to see a little bit of it because he played for the a few years with the Rays.
Oh,
and obviously it's my dad's favorite team, so I got to watch him play a lot with the Rays. Yeah. And he was, middle of the road, league average guy. The main thing with him, he did have a bad year with the Twins last year, but he's a career 753 OPS hitter against lefties. He hit /279, 338, 415 against lefties, which is exactly what the Tigers need. They need someone who can hit left-handed hitting from the right side of the plate. So now with these injuries, what's interesting, guys, is the bench spots. Well, actually, now with Perez out, that might mean now that both Justin Henry Malloy and Spencer Torkelson might both make the team. Yeah, so that gives you 2 guys who really can't do anything but hit. Justin Henry Malloy is a god-awful outfielder. He's the Tigers' own Dr. Strangelove. He almost killed Max Clark yesterday in an exhibition game, and he ran into him. And then they got Spencer Torkelson. He's taking reps in right field now, and apparently in a desperate attempt to make him more versatile. This is a career first baseman who couldn't play third base. That experiment lasted like a month in the minor leagues, yet they're going to try him in the outfield. And apparently non-roster invitee Jamani Jones is still a possible option in center field as well. But I don't know about this guy's. Margot fills a need, but he's a league average guy. He's going to probably give you 0 WAR. At this point, I'm not sure what to make of the offense. They're going to have to really, really, really once again lean on the pitching until they can get this lineup sorted out.
Well, the other thing too is they're not a team that manufactures runs. Well, not a lot of teams are anymore anyway, but they don't manufacture runs. They're not laden with speed. They don't play that kind of brand of baseball. Of course, again, that's kind of unfortunately, it's a dying brand of baseball anyway. But so they're not going to be able to really manufacture a lot of stuff. They're going to have to, score the way that everybody else is scoring nowadays, which is through extra base hits and home runs. And they don't have really a lot of thumpers in that lineup. You mentioned Malloy, and he kind of reminds me of a young Marcus Thames Okay, he's going to run into some balls. He's going to hit some home runs. He's going to, he's going to butcher a lot of plays in the outfield. To Al's point a couple of seconds ago, what concerns me, and I think we talked about this last time, Nick, is what concerns me about this roster is there's so many players who are playing either out of position entirely, or who are trying to learn new positions on the fly. And the Colt Keith thing, especially, he was moved to first base because Gleyber Torres was signed to play second. Okay, fine. Torres is not a good second baseman metrically, okay, but by defensive metrics. I don't know, and it's not like they signed Torres for 10 years. I mean, he can be out of here in a couple of years. So I'm not sure what the game plan is when Torres is no longer on the roster. Do they move Keith back to second? There's just too many players moving around the diamond, and it's kind of like that whole thing about, well, if you got 3 goalies, you got none. If you got 2 quarterbacks, you got none. If you got 6 John Walkenfusses, which is essentially what they have, AJ Hinch loves to have.
That's a deep cut.
and I love having versatility as well, but I'm not at the expense of bad defense. And I just feel like all these guys now are just I don't know. I don't know really. And the injuries aren't helping. In their defense, the injuries are not helping at all. But Torkelson in the outfield, you mentioned, I think you put it well, a desperate attempt to make him versatile. He's the right-handed hitting DH, essentially, which means he's not going to play as much as Kerry Carpenter because you're not going to face as many lefties as you face righties. So, Andy Ibanez, though, was raking against lefties last year. I'm not sure if he's got a spot. Where is he going to play? I don't know. AJ loves it though. I think he loves making out different lineups every day, and I just think he likes that stuff. And I think I don't know why. I guess he finds it comforting when he can look down the bench and see a guy and he can put him anywhere he wants. But it doesn't mean that you're good defensively if you can do that. I was talking to my stepbrother just before the show, and we were talking about this, and I said, defense is really tricky in baseball. It's not just as clear cut. For example, you watch a ball game, and you see a seeing eye base hit. Okay, a seeing eye single that bleeds through the infield. Was it really a seeing eye hit, or was it because the shortstop doesn't have good range, or was it because he wasn't positioned properly, or was it? There's a lot of variables. A Texas League fly ball that falls between the left fielder and the shortstop. Was it just one of those things, or could it have been avoided? Did the outfielder get a bad jump? What did he take a bad route? Did the shortstop do a poor job in getting? And maybe they didn't see the ball come off the bat real well. There's a lot of things that separate really good defensive teams from not so good defensive teams that end up costing you ball games over the course of 162 games. It may not seem like a lot. You're watching a ball game. Oh God, bleeding a seeing eye hit that got through. Oh geez, that sucks. Well, did it have to be that way? Maybe another team's shortstop would have gotten to that ball and would have thrown that runner out. I mean, there's just so many things that separate, minute things that separates good defensive teams from bad ones.
Yeah.
I will say, and I admitted this before, I'm not following the Tigers as much now, but like the very little I do notice, I still ask the question is like, what are they doing? It seems really strange. Let's move these players from their natural positions to somewhere else.
Yeah.
They weren't necessarily good fielders in their natural position. Now let's put them in another position.
Yeah.
So is that helping? Is that what's the desperation why you're doing that kind of thing? I just none of it makes any sense. It sounds like they're putting a lot of Band-Aids because they got players hurt. And I don't know. When you move a player to a new position or a new player comes onto the team, there's an adjustment period. And if you have too many of those simultaneously, I'm going to see there's probably a cumulative effect where they're going to lose a lot of games. And is it because of poor fielding? Possibly. I mean, I'm sure that'll contribute, and people are just trying to get their head straight in a new position. I'm not saying anything about Spencer Torkelson because I am still taking a vow of silence on him. Because I don't know.
Well,
what
I
the
would
deal
just
is
say
there.
that I think Spencer Torkelson in right field is going to make Nick Castellanos look like Al Kaline.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but it really does feel like they're flailing a bit, Nick. You're right. Like they're just kind of throwing shit at the wall right now because of injuries, and two is because the Bregman thing didn't work out, which threw a whole bunch of positions into flux. And for that matter, that one of the guys they thought was going to be one of the solutions at third base just got sent down to AAA, in Jace Jung, for example. So they're one another option. I think they're at like options F at this point when it comes to who's playing third base. So, and now it's looking that way for center field as now too. So, but there was, other than there was good news in that Casey Mize and Jackson Jobe are both in the starting rotation. Both looked, especially Mize. Mize looked really good this spring. He actually looked like he's missing bats for the first time ever. But a rotation of Skubal, Flaherty, Olsen, Mize, and Jackson Jobe should be pretty damn good. And if for depth, the Kenta Maeda is still gone into the pen. Kaiser Maero, who was part of the pitching chaos last year, going to AAA. Alex Cobb, everybody's forgotten about. Remember he got that big contract. Yeah. He's starting the year on the IL, so he should be back sometime before the All-Star break.
Right.
So they got some depth there. The pitching's going to be. I'm not worried about the pitching. I'm worried about the offense. But I think the more interesting news, we'll have lots more to say about the Tigers lineup and their pitching once the season starts. But again, going back to broadcasting, is Kirk Gibson, longtime, obviously Tigers legend, longtime broadcaster. And it was really obvious how much Parkinson's has taken out of him, because remember what Gibson was like in the booth in the early 2000s?
Yeah. Yeah.
He was hilarious. He was he was loud, boisterous, and to see him now, how much he has lost because of Parkinson's. Yet he was, and I always enjoyed his commentary, because I always felt like I learned something from him when he was, especially the guy was a bench, he was a bench coach and a manager in the big leagues, for Christ's sake. Plus he had 15 years in the league.
Right.
But Kirk Gibson, who had been doing a limited amount of games with the Tigers broadcast over the past several years because of the Parkinson's, announced he was stepping down. He was stepping away from his part-time role in the booth, and he wanted to focus on his battle with Parkinson's. He is going to remain a special assistant to the president of baseball operations, Scott Harris. Essentially the same job as like Willie Horton, Alan Trammell, Miguel Cabrera. The job the legends get, essentially.
Yeah.
So I think it's all well and good for Gibson. As good as he was in the booth, and how much I enjoyed him, he was sounding rough the last couple of years. And it was interesting when you see, when you go into like social media and see people go to Tigers forums and ask, who is that guy in the booth? And they can't believe it when they find out it's Kirk Gibson, of all people, because he's so changed so much over the years. His voice is so halting now. So it's time, I think, because plus, what is he? Got to be in his. He's probably in his mid 60s, late 60s at this point.
Yeah,
Kirk Gibson. It's
time.
time. Yeah. It's time. But Matt Shepard is stirring the pot. The former play-by-play man claimed on Twitter, quote, "This was not his decision." Speaking of Gibson, he thinks Gibson was tossed out on his ass. Shepard, who was replaced with a massive upgrade in Jason Benetti last year, has been spewing sour grapes as of late. He, along with claiming Gibson was forced out, he told the Freeps Carlos Monarez that he still doesn't know or understand why he was let go from Bally Sports and his play-by-play job. Essentially, why didn't he claims no one ever told him why he was let go. And it's like, it's really starting to sound like Matt Shepard is really starting to come off as this. He got the job of his dreams, and he couldn't do it right. He couldn't do it properly, and now he's lashing out that he couldn't do it. And in this latest one of Gibson's decision, the Tigers said it was the Tigers and Gibson put out essentially joint press releases saying it was mutual. It was time. That Shepard, for some reason, claims it wasn't. And not that Shepard's the most likable guy anyway, guys, but why is he sticking his nose in this stuff? He's been gone from the Tigers for 2 years.
Well, you know what really when that came out, not when the Gibson thing, but when that came out, that piece by Maneras you're talking about, when Shepard says, "I don't know why I was let go." Okay.
Yeah.
Now he's been in this business. Shepard has been in this broadcasting business for ever. Okay.
Decades.
He should know, right? He should know that that's the way it goes in that business.
Yeah.
Nobody owes you anything. You could be the best announcer in the world, and if they decide they want to get rid of you and go in a different direction, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
It's not a regular job where you get performance evaluations and you have to. No, they can let you go at any time, whether it's, in this case, it could be ratings, it could be viewer feedback, it could be, and frankly, he's not owed an explanation. And as rough as that may sound, he's not owed an explanation. He really isn't, and he should know that. Yeah. I mean, he should know that. He's seen a million of his friends and colleagues get let go from jobs all over, not just in Detroit.
Yes.
If you're in the business, that's the way it goes. Okay. That's just the way it is. I thought it was really disingenuous for him to come out and say, "I don't know why I was let go."
Yeah, bullshit.
Well, okay. A, bullshit. Okay, you can say that.
Yeah.
But B,
yeah,
you're not owed an explanation, Matt. Yeah. These are people. Now we can disagree with these decisions all we want. They make their decisions based on certain things. Nobody woke up. Here's the other thing. Nobody woke up one morning and said, "I'm going to fire Matt Shepard." That doesn't happen. Okay. As cutthroat as that business can be, it's not like that. It's not like that. There are reasons people get let go. And I'm guessing, here's my theory, and I wrote about this when it happened. The reason he was let go, and he should know this, by the way, but even if he does, it doesn't matter, is because of a combination of viewer feedback, advertisers not comfortable with him, and you start pissing them off, then you're really done for. And I just think that it just added up. And
I would also add the fact that Benetti was available.
Benetti was available, right? Benetti was,
which is
right. Yes, Benetti was available. That's true. But it doesn't. My whole problem with that whole piece that Carlos did was I tell you what. If you had no opinion of Matt Shepard before that piece, it certainly did make you give you an approval of him. It wasn't a piece that made him sympathetic, is what I'm trying to say. It wasn't
right.
Okay, here's it was a no-win situation there for Matt. The people who wanted him replaced, okay? And they're going to read that like I did and further be justified as to why they wanted him replaced. If you had no opinion of Matt Shepard whatsoever, I don't think this makes you get any sort of sympathy for him. I don't think you become a Matt Shepard sympathizer, okay? And the people who genuinely liked Matt, genuinely liked him, genuinely thought he did a good job. Some of those folks might say, yeah, I don't know, why was he let go? But it's hard to make that case when somebody of Benetti's caliber. You know what it was? It'd be like if Les Moss said, "I don't know why I was let go as Tigers manager," when they hired Sparky Anderson. Really, Les? You would. Les Moss was the sacrificial lamb, we all know, because the Sparky became available. So they fired Les 54 games into the season. Bob Page maintains that was a dirty deal that they did on Les. And so did Frank Robinson. Okay, whatever. But the bottom line is because Sparky Anderson was available. A Hall of Fame manager was available. Jason Benetti was available. And it was a combination of that. And I just don't think that Matt scored very well in the feedback. He was a utility guy. A utility announcer. He was a utility announcer who did not.
You're right. Matt Shepard was a good comment. He's fine with basketball, fine with football.
This is the problem that I have with this whole thing.
That way, so
the problem that I have
is what it is. So.
Yes, the problem that I have with this whole thing about Matt.
I guess it's a.
Can you hear me?
With that, you guys want to touch a little bit on the Lions before we wrap it up?
Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. I hear both of you guys.
Al, can
But-
you hear me? I don't think Al can hear me.
I don't think Al can hear you either.
Yeah, he's off now.
Yeah.
His
So-
internet's been spotty. No,
No,
my whole thing, real quick. One more. Al, can you hear me? No, Nick's not there.
Oh.
Al, can you hear me?
Here we go. Yeah, I think we're back now.
Okay. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah.
All
Can you
right.
hear me? You can't hear me.
All right.
Can you hear me, Al?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear
Right.
I
me?
want to
Yeah.
say one more thing. One more thing about Shepard.
Go for it.
Is-
Go for
I
it.
don't know why he did that. I don't
Yeah.
know why. I don't know why he thought there was going to be a good idea for him to essentially whine. And here's the other thing: it happened 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It happened 2 years ago. This piece, this is a piece you would write in the waking hours of him being fired, not 2 years later. So I don't know what that's all about. The timing is weird. I don't know what I don't know what Matt Shepard's thinking about. I don't know why he thinks that would make him come off looking sympathetic. He comes off looking like a whiner, quite frankly, and to say disingenuous. To say that I don't know why it was like, it doesn't matter. It'd be like a coach. Can you imagine a coach saying, "I don't know why I was let go."
Right.
That's the business. The business is you're hired to be fired. That's
Mhm.
the way it is. And he didn't come off. I don't know why he did it. I don't know why he. I don't know why. I don't know why that whole thing happened. I don't know why Carlos talked about him. I don't know why Shepard did the interview. I don't know anything. And now this whole thing you're talking about Gibson, but that's the other thing. The whole thing that's weird too. I don't know where he's going with that Gibson stuff. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Mark
You know what?
Gibson's a big boy. He can protect himself.
You're right.
Yeah.
So I've never watched like Matt Shepard calling a game, being out here, of course.
Right.
I've heard a lot of grumbling from Tigers fans that he wasn't all that good. So I'll take their word for it. And but I think that's the important point you make, Greg, is like, this happened a couple of years ago in this article about him. Like, I don't know why I was fired. Like, who gives a shit 2 years later?
Right.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Right. I don't get it.
It's like irrelevant. Look, I've lost jobs too, like, and not being in the media industry, like,
Right.
for sometimes it's like, well, one time the company went out of business. So like,
Yeah. Right.
but there are other times like somebody made the decision that's above my head, and whether I think it's fucking dumb or makes sense, it's irrelevant. I'm not. If I whine about it, they're not going to give me the job back. It's not going to happen. They're going to say, "Get the fuck out of here!" Like we were actually right in letting you go. So it's irrelevant.
God.
And the only thing I can see now is Matt Shepard is on his trajectory to do some trash talk sports radio. Like he's whined about him losing his job, and he's going to probably have a podcast where he's going to bitch about that like every week. And then he's trying to be the expert and like, what do broadcasters think? Why is Kirk Gibson, being forced out? Well, the guy's got Parkinson's disease. Like, what the fuck? It's like at some point that Parkinson's going to catch up to him. It's like, it's not fair to Gibson. It's not fair to people turning into the games. It's like, that's a demanding job in a lot of ways.
And Gibby's role has been gradually and slowly diminished over the last several years. It's not like he was doing 120 games and all of a sudden he's gone. His participation in these broadcasts has been gradually less and less, to the point where his not being there isn't all that shocking, especially what you said about the Parkinson's thing. So, and Al made a great point. Kirk Gibson does not need anyone to run interference for him. Not at all.
No, especially this guy.
Right.
So
I don't get it. I don't know where Matt's coming from with all this stuff. It's just really weird. I don't know. I can't explain it.
I'll add too with the Carlos article. Well, it's Carlos. The guy has like such low standards to begin with.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's a cheap article. It's a cheap story. And so
it wasn't like they fired Ernie Harwell, for God's sakes. I mean,
I know. That's right.
Jesus.
And Harwell didn't complain, if
Now
I
it's bad.
remember.
No.
He was totally professional. It's like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, I'm gone. Like,
Well, Greg, though, didn't he do that? He did do the one thing, didn't he, where he went public saying that with Ernie Harwell, that he said this is not my decision when he was let go by Bo Schembechler. If I
Yes,
remember right.
but
Right.
yes, he did have a press conference. That's true.
Yeah.
It was a power play. There's no question about it. But he'd earned that. Ernie
that's the
had
difference. He had
earned that.
cachet. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Oh, absolutely. Ernie wasn't dumb. He knew that he had public opinion on his side. He knew that.
Right.
He knew that when it came to, you think that when it came to Ernie Harwell and Bo Schembechler, guess who's going to have the most sympathy? I don't care how staunch of a Michigan football fan you are. You're gonna side with Ernie on that one. So he knew that. Ernie, I love Ernie Harwell, but that was a very coordinated effort on his part, and I don't blame him. I'm not blaming him, but that was not.
No, you said it right when you called it a power play. That is exactly what it was, and he had it. Yeah.
He knew he was going to come off looking good, and he did.
Yeah.
And he was going to be the sympathetic figure, which he was. And here's big bad Bo Schembechler, making this decision. Nobody liked Bo as a Tigers executive to begin with.
Yeah, a football guy playing baseball.
And so,
president.
he's obviously, Bo was new in that role, and of course Bo was going to get that was easy pickings for Ernie, or easy pickings. But he had earned that. Is the point? He had earned the ability to do that. Shepard, I don't get it. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's and I think Jason Benetti is like, he's made everybody forget about Shepard anyway at this point. So
yeah.
And Benetti and Andy Dirks and Dan Petrie, it's gonna, between the three of them, it's gonna be great. It's going to be a very enjoyable, and for that matter, Dan Dickerson filling in when Benetti's doing national TV. It's great. The Tigers have a great booth now. Shepard was always the weak spot. At least ever since he moved on from Rod and Mario, and Rod sucked and Mario was essentially league average. They're in a much, the Tigers broadcast. Hell, most of the broadcast teams we have in Detroit are very, very good to excellent. And the Tigers have finally got back to that point. With Jason Benetti and Dan Dickerson. I mean, it's great. So, all right. With that, a little bit of Lions, and we'll wrap it up. I guess what it comes down to, guys, are you upset that, I don't know why I say upset, but there are fans out there who are apparently upset that the Lions spent most of their free agency bringing the band back together, so to speak. They didn't really go all out in free agency. No, they re-signed the majority of their guys. No, they brought back Barnes and Davenport and Anzarike, Patrick, Craig Reynolds, Dan Skipper, blah, blah, blah. They signed almost all the role players back. And their only real free agent signings in the notes was DJ Reed, who was going to take over for Carlton Davis, who went to the Patriots. And they got Reed on a deal. He's pretty much the same player.
Yeah.
And they also signed a nose tackle, Rory Lopez from the Cardinals, who's essentially going to back up DJ Reader. And that puts Broderick Martin on notice. But it really looks like the Lions are going to address their pass rush needs in the draft. And for some reason, there's a segment of the fan base that are so upset that they didn't go out and spend huge money on an aging pass rusher, or they spent huge money on an unproven edge guy, because these guys are getting, even bad ones are getting $20 million a year at this point, it seems like. But it really looks like they're going to address this, and I think guard as well in the draft, since Kevin Zeitler moved on. So,
yeah,
I don't know about you, but I think Brad Holmes has earned the benefit of the doubt at this point when it comes to building a roster. And if he doesn't want to sign the Chase Youngs of the world for $25 million for a year or something like that, I think he's going to address it in the draft and probably end up getting a pretty damn good player.
You know what kind of sold me on Brad Holmes was almost immediately after he came into town. And remember when he first was hired back in 2021, the controversy at the time, not maybe not controversy, but the question at the time was, what do the Lions do with Kenny Golladay? Remember? That was the big thing.
Yes, yeah,
what
that was a big controversy.
Kenny Golladay. Okay, here's this, and Kenny Golladay was the poster child of a player who Lions fans thought he was better than he really was. We've seen that over and over and over where Lions fans aggrandize a certain player. Roy Williams was another one, the wide receiver. They aggrandize a player, thinking that he's got more value. DeAndre Love is another one, a linebacker. He's got more value than they really are. Okay, really have. Holmes comes in, and I think it was in his opening presser. They asked him about Kenny Golladay because the Lions had to make a decision about Kenny Golladay. And Holmes, and at the time it was like, oh my gosh, this is a difficult decision. You know, kind of like when Joe Dumars took over the Pistons, and he right away had to make a decision on Grant Hill and all that other stuff. So Holmes comes in and kind of expertly put out a master class on how to handle those kinds of situations, made the right call on Golladay, did not tender him, did not want anything to do with him, quite frankly, and addressed the receiver room via the draft. And they got Amon-Ra and so forth. Now, Kenny Golladay essentially vanished from the face of the NFL. After he left the Lions and signed with the Giants, he became persona non grata. Giants fans hated the guy after about a year and a half, not even a year and a half, maybe after a half a year, because this guy's a clown. And if you look at his production, if you want to use that word, since he left the line, first of all, if you look at his production as a Lion, he only had like one and a half good years from number one. That's the first. He went to the Giants and did nothing, absolutely nothing with the Giants. And that's when I knew that this guy, Holmes, knows what he's talking about, because he didn't take the bait on a guy like maybe a Bob Quinn would have, or somebody else who kind of thinks that Kenny Golladay is better than he really is, fall all over himself to keep Kenny Golladay in Detroit. No. I'll show you the door, Kenny. I've got other people I'm going to bring in, and that's how they got Amon-Ra. That's how they got, you name it. They got a bunch of guys in the draft over the next 2 or 3 years. And that, to me, that showed me right there that Brad Holmes knew what the hell he was doing. And that was not a lucky decision he made on Golladay, by the way. That was a calculated decision. Now, I don't know that Holmes knew that Golladay would be as bad as he was with the Giants, but he knew that he was not the answer. He was not what Lions fans thought he was. Golladay had essentially 1.5 good seasons, and that was about it.
I'll add two on that one.
Yeah.
Golladay was asking a lot of money, and the Giants gave him a ton of money.
Right.
$72 million they gave him.
It was insane. It's just you put it in a pile and just burn that pile of money. I mean, that's which is what the Giants did. And instead, Holmes went to the draft, and he did pick up a couple. I don't know if he traded for them or a couple free agents, wide receivers. Chark was one of them. Now I'm drawing a Raymond was another one from the Rams.
Josh Reynolds.
Josh Reynolds. Yeah. So, they were good players. They were really, really good wide receivers. And so he didn't bust the bank on that player just to have one good wide receiver all of a sudden, because it didn't pay off. And it's the same thing now with all these defensive ends that the fans want to sign, these big free agent defensive ends. Take this big swing this year whereas Holmes is playing the long game. So if they sign, we talked about this before, if they sign somebody, a defensive end, let's say like they were able to persuade Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, and they throw like a shit ton of money at that person.
Right.
What's going to happen when Aiden Hutchinson's rookie contract expires? What's going to happen when Brian Branch's or Kirby Joseph's or Akeem Ali McNeil, their contracts expire? Right. They're not going to have any money left.
Yeah.
Yep.
He has to pick and choose which guys he's going to play, pay top dollar, because he can't do that with everybody.
Right.
So he's bringing back guys. I think Aiden Hutchinson after this next season is going to have a really big ass payday. Yep. And he's still fairly young. Yep. And so that's who you're going to pay. You're not going to pay an aging defensive end that kind of money.
Yep.
Right.
So because that contract's not going to age well, and it's going to be dead money in the cap, or could very well be. So
that's probably why they decided to move on from Zadarius Smith. They didn't like where that was headed. You know, they didn't want that dead cap money. Exactly. And
That's right.
yeah. So yeah,
So-
it's
You know what I think? You know what I think, guys?
Yeah.
I think that all the good front offices that we've all seen in Detroit, no matter what the sport is, I think what one of the things they all have in common is they've all been. I'm talking about the really successful ones. What the one thing that they've all had in common was they weren't ever afraid to cut bait on people. They weren't. They
Mhm.
didn't get suckered into keeping players that outlived their usefulness, and in the bad, and conversely,
Mhm.
the not so good front offices would do the opposite. They would hold on to these guys that clearly weren't top tier players, thinking that they were top tier players because the teams that here in Detroit they were playing for were so lousy. And that's why I mentioned earlier about some of these other players who were aggrandized beyond their means. But the really good front offices have done exactly what Brad Holmes has done. Like Zadarius Smith is a perfect example. Perfect example of that. Now, would they bring him back later, like around training camp, if he's still available? Maybe. But he's a great example of like Al said, reading the tea leaves and say, look, we got this guy mid-season because we were desperate. We needed help, and he was okay, but he's not the long-term answer. We've got other people that can do that. And that's what good front offices do. They're not beholden to, he's kind of an outlandish guy. He came in and, he was all big Mr. Detroit. I'm a Lion now and everything. And it was, that's great. But when it comes to actual production on the football field, he just wasn't.
Oh,
we just
so
lost
Greg
Greg.
jumps back is like,
Yeah.
no, Greg's exactly right. And I'm thinking about like other situations. The one that comes to mind always is the Red Wings when they got Igor Larionov. They traded away a 50-goal scorer to pick up Larionov, who wasn't, arguably that good in the NHL at that point. And now is in the Hall of Fame, but somehow they find the players that are the right piece for the team versus, the Lions used to do this a lot. Like they'd have one star player accidentally draft a star player and want to keep him for dear life because the rest of the team is so miserable. And that's kind of like, but the single player at a big cost is not your savior.
Yep.
So
exactly. Yep.
So,
Greg is back with us. I don't. Like I said, the internet has been fun of all of us tonight. But I guess before we wrap it up, one more thing. Greg, you can hear us, correct?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. All right. Rules changes have been proposed. The Lions have a big one.
Yeah.
This is actually the direct quote. Allow wild card teams to be seated higher than division champions if the wild card team has a better regular season record. Wow, I wonder where that came from.
Yeah.
After last year.
Yeah.
Then also the Packers want the tush push banned. And the Eagles are asking for both teams to be guaranteed a possession in overtime during a regular season. We saw the Lions take advantage of that, like when they beat the Rams in the first game of the year. The Rams never got to touch the ball. And also, the NFL plans to recommend the use of virtual measurements for ball placement. They'll go electronic, which they should have done a long time ago, which will essentially all but eliminate the chain gang, but they'll be left on the field for God knows why, but they're still going to have them. But they won't be dependent on the chain gang for all measurements anymore. And there's talk about expanding the use of replay for things like face masks and stuff like that. So what do you guys just think on these rule changes? Yeah, only one that doesn't bother, only one I think is dumb is getting rid of the tush push. Only one or two teams can pull that off anyway. What's the big deal about that? The other ones, they all make sense.
I agree with you. Like tush push, I don't care about whatsoever. And but I like the one where what do you call it? You look at the team's record. So if you're in a tough division, and you don't make it because you're number 2 in your division, but some team in another division has an under 500 record and they make it into the playoffs, and you're like
And they got
12
the
and
whole
5
game.
and you
Yeah.
don't, right?
Yep, exactly.
Honestly, if I would go to just straight record, and if a division winner has an under 500 record, fine, give them the division title, but you don't make the playoffs.
Right.
You can't win 50% of your games even. So like you're making the playoffs over a 12-win team who just they're shit out of luck because they finished second in their division. So
if the team ever won, I mean, how often does that happen that where a team is under 500 and wins the division? I don't know how many times that has happened.
NFC South does it kind of regularly.
All of them, I think.
It feels like they do it regularly. It happened, I think, a couple of years ago, actually.
Yeah, it did.
So
yeah, usually it's like a one game under 500 or something or even just 500 for that matter. But there's almost always a wild card team that has a better record than at least one of the divisional winners. It usually is.
Yeah,
this year,
I usually
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
No, just because I usually don't subscribe to the theory that let's cherry pick because something happened one year, there was an outlier. Now we got to change the entire playoff system. The thing I don't like about what you guys do like is I'm uncomfortable with teams that win divisions having to start on the road. I don't think that's good. I know what you're saying about they're 9-8, and the wild card's 12-5, so the 12-5 team should get the home field advantage. Well, then why did the 12-5 team not win the division? I mean, okay, so you're in a tough division. Too bad. I mean, that's just the way it goes sometimes. These 9-8 teams that win the division may be in divisions that in a couple of years would be the division winner would be 12-5. These things are in cycles. It's not a chronic problem. I don't know that I just don't like the idea of winning the division and then starting on the road. Because eventually you're going to play a road game. If you win a division 9-8, for example, and you play a 12-5 team in the wild card or whatever, first round, and that 12-5 team beats you, okay, you're done. Or if you beat that 12-5 team, like what the Commanders did to the Lions, then they're going to play a road game. Then you start playing your road games. You're gonna hit the road eventually when you're 9-8. If you're gonna try to make a run in the playoffs in the NFL, you're gonna play a road game. You're not gonna get a home field advantage more than that first. I just feel like you're taking the incentive away from winning the division by robbing that team of a home playoff game. That's where I fall on it. I don't think we should change rules of the playoffs because there was an outlier one year. And you're right. It's clearly obvious what the Lions, where this was coming from. I know where they're coming from with it, although they did win the division. But they could have been the Vikings. This is where this is coming from. They could have been the Vikings 14-3, whatever, and having to start on the road, which the Vikings did. But if you're a 14-3 team, you should be able to win a road playoff game. Anyway, if you're playing a 9-8 team on the road, because that 9-8 team won their division, you should be able to beat them. If you've got a 5-win advantage in the regular season, you shouldn't be scared to play a 9-8 team on the road in the playoffs. You should be able to beat that team. I don't care where you play the football game, on the road, neutral field, or wherever. So I guess I can disagree with both of you. I think that if you win the division, you should play a home game in the first round. Now after that, let the chips fall where they may, because after that it's all based on seeding and your record and so forth. But in the first round, I think the divisional team should get home field. That's my opinion.
With that, as Greg reigns in our parade,
I actually don't care. I don't care who does who gets a home game or not a home game.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
If you want to win to the Super Bowl, you got to win the game. It doesn't matter what. Yeah. If you're that good of a team, you can win on the road too.
Right.
For me, it's just like an under 500 team making the playoffs when an above 500 team doesn't in the same.
Well, that's the way it's always been. I mean, that's the way it is. Sometimes.
Yeah, I know exactly, and it's like
how many teams now would make would go 10-6 and not make the playoffs in the old days? A lot. And how many teams would win divisions at 9-7? That was just the way it was. That's just the way it is. So.
All right, as we agree to disagree, I think it's time to wrap the show up. We're already over our 2-hour mark. So I guess with that means it's time for our jerk of the week. As usual, Nick, you get to go first. Who's your jerk?
It's the NCAA tournament selection committee and the process. So it's a couple of things that popped up. The first one I saw is when they were selecting the teams for the tournament. West Virginia University was not in it, and the governor of West Virginia was threatening to sue the NCAA for the team not getting into the tournament, which is kind of stupid to me. That it's gotten to the point where governors or lawmakers are suing, what the fuck? And then on top of that, I saw somewhere where the chairman of the selection committee itself was, I think he's the AD of University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and he actually, I didn't watch college football, basketball close enough, but UNC was kind of on the cusp of should they make it, should they not make it, but people were saying they were closer towards they shouldn't have made it this year, but they did. Right. And that chair of that committee actually got like a $60-something thousand bonus for UNC making it into the tournament. Supposedly the rules are it's your team that is like being considered, you have to recuse yourself from being part of that decision. Yeah. But
holy conflict of interest, Batman. Yeah, exactly.
There's probably a quid pro quo in there anyway. So it's kind of just a shitty system altogether. So it's basically the selection committee and the process and the drama around who gets in, who doesn't.
Yeah.
For March Madness.
Yep.
And for that matter, it's obvious that the tournament doesn't make it. The conference tournaments didn't make a difference because Michigan won 3 games, won the Big Ten conference tournament, and still ended up as a 5 seed. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, then why play the tournaments? The tournament doesn't do anything with seeding at all because Michigan should have been a higher seed. It worked out in the end, but still, you're dead on with the selection committees when it comes to college sports in general. We have the same bullshit going on with the football playoffs now. So good call. Mm-hmm. Greg, who is your jerk?
Well, this guy has got to be jerk of the century. I mean, of the millennium. Matthew Weiss, former University of Michigan. Assistant coach. Say no more. 24 counts of cyber fraud, accessing computers and downloading videos and intimate photographs of primarily female college athletes over the course of, I think, like 10 years. He was doing this, and it was a very elaborate. I don't know where he learned his hacking skills, but they were very, very, very good, unfortunately, and was stealing passwords and all sorts of stuff. And this is a Jim Harbaugh guy. He worked for John Harbaugh as well with the Ravens. He's married with 3 kids. The whole thing is icky. He's facing now dozens, they say dozens, plural, dozens of years in prison, millions of dollars in fines. Yeah. And I had to almost take a shower after I read that article when it broke last. So I remember texting you guys when it came out. I just happened to be on online when it broke, and I texted you, both of you, and I said, you got to read this. This was unbelievable. And throw a book at this guy. I mean, he's obviously going to jail. He's not going to get out of this. I'm not worried about him getting out of this. But the fact that this was able to go on this long, it just goes to show you, I guess, what you can do in the computer cyber world, in that hacking world, how long you can do certain things without getting caught. It's even amazing when you think about it that they even do get caught, considering they were able to do it for so long. In his case, Weiss's case. These actions go back to 2015, so 10 years ago. He's been doing this stuff. It makes you wonder how he was even caught. Thank God he was, of course. And I don't know how many people's young women's stuff he got into, but it was really bad, really bad.
I think he only got caught because it was under using university computers and servers.
Could have been, yeah.
So they might have done
Right.
found a red flag. Like, who
Right.
knows? But that is kind of, it's icky.
Yeah, and what's and why do we get the feeling though that the Michigan athletic department was more relieved and had nothing to do with stealing signs?
Unfortunately, right.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they're like, oh, thank God Connor Stallions wasn't involved in this one. So but the whole thing is nasty, and he's going to serve big boy time, and there should be some severe repercussions in the athletic department for this. Exactly. All right, my jerk of the week. I'm going to go with. I'm going to go into a sport I don't hardly ever talk about. That's UFC, and specifically Joe Rogan. Nitwit of the highest order.
Okay.
Yeah, and first off, how did a hack comedian who was best known for hosting a gross out game show and being like the seventh lead on news radio end up becoming a UFC commentator on all their pay-per-views, but yet he is. But he announced this week that the next UFC pay-per-views, UFC 315, is going to be in Montreal, Canada. And Rogan is not going to go because he doesn't like the Canadian government. This is what he said: "I'd rather go to Russia." What a fucking nitwit! All because of what's going on politically with the tariffs and everything between the U.S. and Canada. Hey, I'm on Canada's side. All this stuff. Our government is run by absolute clueless. I don't even want to go there. But Joe Rogan will not go to Canada, but he's more than happy to go to some place like Saudi Arabia. And the blood money that UFC gets from that group, they're a bastion of cleanliness and not doing bad things. Oh God, don't even get me. UFC is a nasty, nasty organization anyway. They underpay all their fighters. Dana White is a right-wing asshole. Joe Rogan is a right-wing nitwit who believes conspiracy theories. The whole thing is nasty. And yet it just comes out how stupid this man is, Joe Rogan, when he won't go to Canada, but he will go to places like Saudi Arabia. So my jerk of the week is Joe Rogan for being stupid. This is why I try to avoid politics all the time anymore, because my blood pressure goes up at the moment.
Why don't these
get away from midterms? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
No. These people who say those things, why? I wish they would go to Russia. I really do. I really wish a guy like Joe Rogan. If Joe Rogan thinks he could go to Russia and be as successful as he is here with his podcast and with his everything else, he's delusional. And I really wish some of these people who say, "Oh, I would rather be Russian than a Democrat" and stuff like that. Okay, I wish they would go. I wish they would move to Russia and see how great it is. Go get your passport. Go get go try to find a house. Try to find housing in Russia. Try to find a job. I dare you. They won't. It's easy to say I'd rather do this than that. Yeah, but do it, Joe. Go. Yeah. We'll never hear from you again.
And Joe Rogan is the American dream, an idiot who became a multimillionaire. The thing is, he's not even a funny comedian, for Christ's sake. So, don't get me going. All right, I think it's time to wrap things up, guys. We're running long anyway. So, Greg, if you could do your thing, get out the social media and the thank yous and all that fun stuff.
Sure. Thank you, of course, to Coach Chris Creighton. That was very good. Too bad we lost his audio at the very end, but that's okay. It was still a good discussion. We were just about done anyway, so that was good. So kudos to him. Once again, thanks to Greg Steiner at the SID over there to set that up for us. Don't know who we'll have, if anyone, on April 7th. I know Al's going to talk probably a little bit about podcasts beyond that with his schedule, but I'm not sure what we're going to do about April 7th. Want to, of course, subscribe to my Out of Bounds Substack, gregeno.substack.com. Please do that. I'll be in your inbox every Monday. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. Follow me on Blue Sky at Greg Eno as well. So I want to thank my lovely wife, Sharon, and thank you, gentlemen, for making Monday night so gosh darn fun.
Indeed. And Nick, if you want to tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yeah, on Twitter, I'm at Nick Milanovich, and at Blue Sky, I'm at Cat Up a Tree.
Yes.
And you can follow me on either one of those and ping me. Want to talk about Detroit sports? I do also want to. A friend of mine and former colleague said one of his friends is from the Detroit area and lives now in California. And his friend is named Jeff Smith, which I want to give a shout out to. Apparently, he's been a listener to the Knee Jerks podcast already.
Nice.
Awesome.
So
you.
I'm giving a shout out.
Great.
I hope he listens to this podcast. And
That's great.
Yeah. So right on. But
Super.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Right
Jeff. Yes.
Well, can I say one more thing, Al? One more
please
thing.
do. Please do.
I forgot to mention it when Chris Creighton was on the program. Ben Braun, who's considered the godfather of Eastern Michigan basketball. Ben was last week or 2 weeks ago was inducted into the MAC Hall of Fame. So congratulations to Ben Braun.
Awesome.
right on.
By far the leader in wins for Eastern Michigan basketball as head coach, and went on to coach Rice, California, and so forth. Carved out a really nice career for himself after Eastern, but he's going into the MAC Hall of Fame. And I saw the video that they shot of Eastern's athletic director Scott Weatherby calling Ben live and telling Ben that he had been inducted, which was really a very heartwarming video. And Ben was very touched. And so congratulations to Ben Braun. Good stuff. He's in the MAC Hall of Fame.
Right. That's awesome. That's a blast from the past. Ben Braun.
Mm-hmm.
All right. As always, want to give a thank you to Nick and Greg for making this podcast possible, putting up with my janky internet as I'm back up in Traverse City right now. And we've had like 5 inches of snowfall today.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, it's we did not get the memo that it's spring up here.
No kidding.
Yeah. And but before we get into anything, thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, as they say. And if you want to listen to the show, it's always available at the usual places: Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public, Ghana. The kneejerks.net is our homepage. All the links to all the social media, Greg's Substack, anything we talk about will be posted there. You can also get to the MP3 from there as well. And Greg mentioned podcasting as our schedule. I'm going to be leaving town mid-April. My parents sold their place in Florida, bought another place because they're going to move closer to my sister. They're getting up there in age. They need the help. So I'm going to go down there and help them get moved and settled in. So there will be no podcast, I believe, on the 14th. Next one after that will be on the 28th of April. I will probably be back up here in Traverse City, but we will have a podcast. And is it? No, not the 28th. It'll be the 5th. That's right. It'll be May 5th. So I can't even keep our schedule straight at this point, guys. I don't know where I'm going to be half the damn time. I know this. I'm hardly ever home anymore. So, but yeah, that's the way it's looking. Probably one podcast in April, and then hopefully back to a more regular schedule in May. So I think that about covers it. So let's get the hell out of here because we're running way long. So again, thank you to Coach Creighton for joining us. We always love talking to him. Thank you to Nick and Greg. Thank you to Linda for giving me the privacy I need to get this knocked out. And let's get the hell out of here. So until this time, 2 weeks from now, I believe, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Good night, guys.
And the writing machine known as Greg Eno.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you in 2 weeks.